Welcome back to Straight Talk. I'm Laurel Porter, and welcome once again to my guest, Oregon Senator Jeff Merkley. Thanks again for being here.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Let's talk about North Korea. The world was watching this week between President Trump and North Korea's Kim Jong-un. There's been criticism from both parties about the lack of substance to the agreement that followed the summit. But from your point of view as a member on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, that agreement and substance aside, is it a good thing that this summit actually happened?
I think so, absolutely, because when two nations are talking to each other, then they have established lines of communication, makes it much less likely that either leader is going to try to start a war. And there's always the possibility that that conversation will lead to something real and significant, but that hasn't happened yet.
Well, President Trump spoke about the summit right afterwards, so let's listen to what he had to say, and then I'll get your reaction.
My meeting with Chairman Kim was honest, direct, and productive. We got to know each other well in a very confined period of time, under very strong circumstance. We're prepared to start a new history, and we're ready to write a new chapter between our nations. I also will be inviting Chairman Kim at the appropriate time to the White House. I think it's really going to be something that will be very important. And he has accepted. I said, at the appropriate time. We want to go a little bit further down the road.
What do you think about inviting Kim to the White House?
Well, the key he mentioned is the word start. This was nothing but a starting gun for a conversation. The very foundation for any reduction in armaments is a scrutinizing of the forces, establishing an inventory of everything one has, in this case, warheads, enrichment facilities, ballistic missile operations, etc. There was no agreement that there will be any type of an inventory done. There was no agreement that any certain warheads would be gotten rid of at any time this century. There was no discussion of verification or transparency.
Isn't that something, though, that Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and others will be working on now that they've had the start?
So here's the start. That's right. But Kim has already gotten two big things. First, he got to sit on the world stage as an equal with the president without giving anything up. And second of all, our president proceeded to say, and I'm ending our cooperation in military exercises with South Korea.
Which seemed to catch the Defense Department off guard.
The Defense Department and South Korea. They had no idea that was coming. And that is a huge deal. That's the sort of thing you could imagine, for example, the president could have said, we are going to go into an intensive examination of all the forces. We've agreed over the next 3 months there will be teams of North Koreans and Americans and internationals looking at everything, establishing the database. 3 months from now, we're going to check in, and then we're going to establish a schedule for getting rid of things. 3 months after that, if we're on track, then the president of North Korea gets invited to the White House. But so far, he's gotten the invitation, he's gotten the world stage, and he's gotten an end to exercises in South Korea, and the U.S. has nothing.
Is it somewhat remarkable, though, that just 6 months ago, when you were criticizing the president for his rhetoric on Twitter, the world was a bit unnerved by the fire and fury tweets, the North Korea's missile tests, lobbing them over Japan, that we've gotten to this point? I know you're a critic of President Trump, but can you give him some credit for getting to this point?
I give him credit that right now there's a dialogue underway, and I'm very hopeful it will go forward, but the test will be what happens from here. We've had dialogues before under previous presidents. We've actually had detailed agreements. We've actually had detailed scrutiny. We've had schedules. We've had some pieces of progress. We will see if this is a different path than what we've experienced before, which has been you get so far down the path, but then things slow down and then eventually grind to a halt. And right now, my guess is that the North Korean team is celebrating. They're saying, we've started a dialogue, we can slow walk this thing, and before you know it, it'll be another 2.5 years and this president will be out of office. And let me tell you, I talked with a high-level defector when I was there visiting.
And you were at the demilitarized zone yourself. Last summer.
So consulted with our allies in Japan and in South Korea, met with teams in China, and met with defectors. And one very high-placed defector said, here's the situation. If you want to understand the grip the North Korean leadership has on their nuclear weapons. Realize it's been 3 generations leaders that have done this, and their attitude is the same as the former leaders of Pakistan, who after India had nuclear weapons, said, if we have to eat grass for a generation, we will do so in order to build these nuclear weapons. He's not going to give up that legacy easily for 2 reasons. One, the legacy of his father and his grandfather, and second of all, he believes that if he lets go of those nuclear weapons, the U.S. might proceed with a Libya strategy of decapitating and wiping out his leadership.
Oh my goodness. Well, like the Wall Street Journal said, the war clouds may have dissipated, but the weather ahead is hard to predict, isn't it?
Exactly.
I do want to ask you something that I ask you every time you're here, but you keep fueling the speculation and doing things that keep the rumor mill churning. In March, you visited New Hampshire, which happens to be the nation's first primary race for the White House. You were there to give a speech to the New Hampshire Democratic Party's executive committee. So the rumor keeps spinning that are you going to run for president in 2020?
Well, I'm exploring it.
So you're seriously exploring
I'm seriously exploring it, yes. And so I've been invited to speak to conventions or attend other events in all 4 of the first primary states. Nobody from Oregon has ever run. I have no idea if it's possible. Well, here's what I know. We are dramatically off track as a nation. I think about my mother's view of the world. She said, son, do your best, do what's right, and never ever step on other people to get ahead. We have lost that sense of dignity, simple human decency and progress. We have proceeded to turn our government into government by and for the powerful instead of government by and for the people. So
Senator,
that's what I'm fighting.
Stop you there. 50. What's the percentage chance in 5 seconds that you'll run for president?
At this
point,
it's
50-50?
No.
We got to go. We'll have to leave it at that. Have a good week.